Hey, good morning. It's Thursday, August 8th, and I'm Rob, that developer dad. It's a rainy, hurricane-y day down here in North Carolina as the rain and wind from Debbie has finally hit my section of the world here, and the power is flicked once or twice, just for a moment. So we'll see how this goes this morning. Um, Yesterday, I got the Blazor UI to a place where I want, where it's good enough to start thinking about storing these NPCs that we're creating and generating and so on. So what I want to do today is start thinking about being able to store the characters that we create so that we can bring them back later on. And to do that, we're going to need some kind of database. And because I'm probably, if I do end up deploying this thing, I'm probably going to deploy it to Azure. And because at some point I'm going to want to run this on my Mac as well, I'm going to install SQL Server inside a Docker container so that we can continue running this code from basically anywhere. So let's flip over to the screen share. And I've already installed Docker Desktop. I've got the Windows subsystem for Linux installed. So those are all the things that I need to be able to do this. And I've got an address for Microsoft, or I've got a page for Microsoft Learn up on my other monitor because it's got the text of the command prompts that I need to run. And first thing we have to do is we've got Docker running, and we need to install SQL Server 2022 image into Docker. I'm going to grab the instructions for that, and we're just going to use the command line. There's instructions on the Microsoft site for Bash and PowerShell and all that stuff. And I guess, well, PowerShell's sort of the hotness. So let's go with PowerShell. I've got that right here. And we got to go back to the home page. Now, something to keep in mind when you're running Docker is when you shut Docker down or you stop the image, any data that's installed with that image probably goes away, or there's a strong likelihood that it will go away. I've seen Docker images maintain their state between starts and stops. But if you want to be really, really safe and protect yourself from data loss, even during local development, you want to create a folder on the host. That means your local system that Docker is running on, that you can then point whatever's running in Docker to that folder on your local machine. So to start with, I'm going to create a new folder right off the root of my C drive here. And I believe in PowerShell, it's make directory, and let's call it Docker volumes. Now we're just going to change CD into that. Docker vols. And we see that it's empty. So I wonder if MD looks like it'll work in PowerShell. Make directory. Game master helper SQL. Excuse me. And cd into game master helper underscore SQL, and we're good there. I'm going to close this command prompt, and let's open another PowerShell window to run our Docker commands and stuff. And I'm going to go back here. So, we've installed Docker, all of this stuff, latest SQL command on your Docker host, whatever. System requirements for SQL Server on Linux, blah, blah, blah. CLI, SQL pull, or SQL command. So first thing we got to do is issue a Docker command. And that's Docker, and we're going to pull mcr.microsoft.com/MSSQL/server 2022-latest. And let's let that do its thing. And I've noticed that the Docker engine tends to be a little bit sleepy on this old Windows laptop I'm using. And it does need to go out to the internet and pull down this image. So we got to wait a minute. Here we go. Error response from daemon, manifest for MCR, latest not found, manifest unknown, manifest tagged by 2022. Latest is not found. Oh, because I spelled it wrong. It's not a dot between MSSQL server. It's MSSQL/server. Let's try again. Here we go. And you can see it's doing all kinds of stuff. Downloading images and this and that and the other thing, and creating base images and downloading installs and all kinds of automagical stuff. So blah, 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 doing things. And it looks like the container image is about 0.5 gig in size. This is going to eat a little bit of RAM on me. I'd considered using Mongo or something smaller, maybe like Postgres or what have you. But I don't know those as well. And Microsoft gives you a free small SQL Server instance for an Azure account. And we can see here that the size of this image is 1.5 gigs. That's a big boy. That's chunky. But I don't want to run this right from here. So what we're going to do, we've got the image installed. That's all good. Now, while we're downloading things, I also want to pop open a new version of Edge, and I want SQL Server Management Studio. PAL. That's Manage Engine. I don't want that. Download SQL Server Management Studio. Here we go. Let's go here. And let's grab this. This is GA version. Yeah. Okay. And I'm just going to use this for local dev. But I'm going to try not to do too much stuff here in Management Studio. All right, and we need to run the setup file. So we're not going to be doing a whole lot of project work during this morning's session, I don't think. Primarily because we need to do a little bit of setup. So let's just let this install to the default location. Do the thing. Yes. And if you're running on a corporate laptop that you don't own, you might need to get permission from your IT department to do this kind of stuff because these things frequently require admin privileges. And on this laptop, I'm running as a local admin. And a lot of corporate IT departments don't let people run as local admin for reasons. Okay. Excuse me. And while it's going, we got to talk about data volumes. So we'll let that install in the background. And we'll come out to the data volume here. And we've got my Game Master Helper, SQL, and there are a few folders that we need to create here. And where did I find it? There's a container version. Tooling outside the containers. And configure and customize. Here we go. Here's all the things. And we want to talk about mounting host directories. So inside here, this gh_SQL, that is my host directory that I'm going to treat as if it's like the data disks for the purposes of this Docker container. I feel like this is about to, nope, it's not prompting me for anything yet. I'm going to pull this off to the side so I can see it behind my PowerShell window. So I want to create 3 new folders here. The first one is going to be data. So md data. We're going to create md log for the log files and md secrets that'll hold all the security stuff for this container and the server itself. So let's take a look at what this folder looks like now. Fantastic. Not a whole lot in it, just 3 empty folders. But that's okay. We'll get there. And that's doing its thing. So while it's installing, let's pop over to our other PowerShell window where we've got the Docker image installed. We can look at Docker desktop. We don't have any containers running right now, but we do see that we have the image. And that just means it's like a big chunky file that basically holds an entire computer inside itself, and then Docker takes that file and loads it into memory and essentially runs a virtual machine, so to speak. If you're not familiar with containers, it's a fairly it can be arcane if you dig in deep, but on the surface, it's similar to working with virtual machines. Hey, Rev's in the chat. And he says you could use SQLite, which is a perfectly valid choice for local development. LinkPad is a utility that lets you work with data from C# using LINQ and SQL and so on and so forth. I've used LinkPad in the past, and it's all right. And okay, you can use it for just sandboxing an idea, he says, without spinning up a whole project, and that is absolutely valid. In the past, I haven't really messed with it a whole awful lot. I haven't really had a need for it. All right, so that's doing its thing, and let's get back to setting up Docker. or let's get back to setting up SQL in the Docker container. So we'll come over to PowerShell and say Docker run -e accept underscore EULA equals Y. So -e means we're setting environment variables. And environment variables usually live or exist as key value pairs. And so each of these strings that we're passing into the Docker run -e option represents an environment variable. And for each environment variable, we need to specify the -e switch, or option, I mean. And this one is setting up the SA password. And yes, you're supposed to protect the SA password and all of that stuff, but ain't nobody getting access to this because it's going to be privately run on my laptop, and I don't have these ports exposed to the internet. So I don't feel super bad about setting up a cheesy SA password for my SQL container here. If I were doing this for production, I'd probably let Azure pick and hide the secret password from me and just let me copy and paste it or reference it by identity management or what have you. But for here, even if somebody gets access to this, they're not going to be able to do any damage. Anything that would happen to this laptop would be an annoyance and a minor setback, but not the end of the world. So MSSQL password equals, what's a good password? I'm going to say saving throw, exclamation point, DC 15. Actually, I'm going to change this to dex save. Dex save DC 15. All right. Now, just because I am Forgetful Jones, I'm going to drop that into a note. Or I'm a forget. Okay, important notes for project resources. And for anybody watching the stream or YouTube video, I have never used dex save DC15 as a password for anything, so forget it. SQL Server container SA password equals dex save DC15. Back to getting this thing ready to rock. So when we're running in Docker, services will be exposed on various ports, and we need to forward those ports so that they're visible outside of the container if we want to be able to address anything that's running in the container. And this is where a lot of people, it's me, I'm a lot of people, get hung up on these kinds of things because I never remember this stuff from one setup to the next. Thank goodness we've got tutorial pages out on the internet that let us do these kinds of things. So we've set up our environment variable to accept the EULA. We've set up the SA password with something that's horrifically insecure, and we've set up our port forwarding. A lot of folks like to mask port 1433 to something else, just for additional security. For this, I don't think it's necessary. So how do we do line continuation in PowerShell? Is it just Shift-Enter? Good. Dash V is for volume. And we want to do C:\\. And because I'm Forgetful Jones, I've already forgotten the path to all of this stuff. Excuse me. So I'm just going to go to Windows Explorer and I'm going to copy. I navigated to that folder. I'm going to paste it, get rid of the extra C:\\. So there's the path. And because we're dealing with Linux, it doesn't like backslashes. /data : and we're going to map this to var option mssql/data. And then a backtick. Okay. What is a backtick? No, I'm just going to shift enter. -v C:// Docker vols /gh_SQL /log. Is that what I called it? Did I call it log or logs? Just log. And that maps to var opt mssql /log, new line. And it's not equals v, but a -v. And we'll -v C:// Docker vols. And Linux is case sensitive. /secrets directs to /var opt mssql secrets and d mcr dot microsoft.com /mssql /server :2022-latest. Let's see what happens here. I might have screwed up this PowerShell statement. Oh yeah, it doesn't like anything I just did. Command not found exception. The term -v is not recognized. Blah blah blah. Oh, okay. I needed those backticks is what I needed. And the ugly thing here is that I've got to retype that whole bloody thing. But I don't want to. So I'm going to paste. And, oh, yuck. Grody. These are things I do not enjoy about terminal type stuff, especially when you got a really, really, really long command line. And dex save DC15. And I've got to type out the path. C:// Docker vols. Is it vols? Yep. Docker vols /